All right, thank you, Mary Ann. So I don't know if you realize, but the staff just took 1,000 pages of federal legislation and gave it to you in 25 minutes. How about a hand for them? That's a very high overview. And so again, the intent is to say that this is what the programs are about, and again, whet your appetite for questions. So hopefully we haven't all scared you to death with all the fiscal responsibility, but obviously that's very important.
We'll help them, Jaime. It's okay. We'll help them out.
Help you. So with that, who would like to start the questions and answers? Yes, Chandel, thanks for coming. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Instructions, thank you. If you would please, thank you for saving your questions, and make sure the mic's in front of you so we can record every question.
Thank you. Jaime, thank you for a great overview. In the beginning, you talked about all the different agencies, all the different service providers, and then obviously you're going to bring people on as doing an RFP. And being a guy who, you know, served in the military, in the Air Force. So how do you guys coordinate all of those, and then after a competitive bid process, make sure that everybody's focused on the end user, as opposed to everybody continuing to be competitive, and so we can provide the best possible service? How do you guys make that happen?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Chandel, and thank you for your service too. I think that it can really capture the essence of where we're trying to go to as a system. After this competition is done, as Chandel said, really the important thing that we've been trying to do now is to convene that ecosystem of partners. The funding streams add up to over $100 million when you look at that big picture. Today, as you can tell, we're only talking about 18 million. That's just Title I. And so it's really important later on that the Title I services again, be a part of an ecosystem that is part of a one-stop delivery system that really works well with the other partners, the other funding streams, that we can braid funding streams that we can co-enroll, that we can leverage. And so that's, I think the good news is that we are on the way there. We've made tremendous progress thanks to Don Soderberg, who's the head of DETR, Richard Whitley, who's the head of DHHS, Steve Canavera at the Department of Education. They've all been here in this building, and we're working really well to go there. Those of you who are familiar with these programs across the nation, states like Texas and Florida have state legislation that took WIOA and kind of braided it all together at that level. And so they're kind of forced to cooperate, if you will, here at the local level. We're not like that here in Nevada. We don't have that state legislative mandate. But again, the good news is that those stakeholders have signed the MOU that Brett referred to, the Memorandum of Understanding. We have a state plan that calls for us to do exactly what you did, Chandel, work together. And so thank you for bringing that up, because that is a commitment you will make as you enter into this competition. And if you one day are awarded, you will be expected to be part of that ecosystem, because if there's one thing we've learned is we can all do good work. We've demonstrated that on our own, but we can do great work if we're working together. So that's really important. Thank you, Chandel. I want to acknowledge, I just scanned the room. I saw a couple of our board members. So our board of directors is mandated to have representation, half of it or more than half of it from local business. So I saw from Tech Queen, I saw our board member Duana Malone here. So welcome and thank you for coming. And then also represented apprenticeship programs. We have 3 members. One of them is here. I see Louis Lupia from Operating Engineers. Thank you for coming as well. And so next question, who is after Chandel? As I sat there and heard some things, maybe this will get, give you some thought, but if I put myself in your shoes and I'm somebody that for the first time hearing about these programs, I heard the word reimbursable. And so I know that a lot of times some awards you apply for an award for $1 million grant, and some grants you get the $1 million up front. And I know that ours is not like that, right, Marianne? If we apply and I get approved to run $1 million programs, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get that money up front.
Right. The feds probably wouldn't like it too much if we gave you $1 million and said, okay, go. So we actually do cost reimbursement awards. So that means that as you incur allowable expenses under the award, we reimburse you for those. So that's how it works. We always hope you expend your entire award. Our goal is to have all of these funds out on the street making a difference. So we don't want you to not spend it. We want you to spend it. So we are here to help you manage your spending, help you with technical assistance, and do whatever we can to ensure that you're successful. If you don't end up being able to spend it, especially the very first year that you have an award, It's tough because you're really trying to learn everything and get up to speed. A lot of our first-time awardees don't spend out, some do, but that just means that whatever isn't spent goes back into the pot to be kind of added to the amount that can go out in the next year. So we're here to help you be successful, like I said, like Jaime has said, so that's how it works.
Yeah, well, oh, there we go. I'm sorry, I have two. So, sir, you first, you're here in the front. Thank you.
I don't currently have a nonprofit set up, but I have a vision for what I want to do. And I was wondering if there's somebody who's going to take me by the hand and get me from where I am to where I need to be in order to qualify for one of these grants.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think one of the reasons we brought you together, our board members and our chief local elected official said to us, you know, once in a while it's good to cast a broader net into the community to look for fresh ideas and fresh, you know, participation. And so being here today, one of the objectives is you get to see who else is in the ecosystem. I hope you brought cards, but if not, also the signing sheet will reveal who's here, and all of you have access to that. You can see who is here, who can I reach out to. There is a process, if you will, right? There's a lot of history here in this room, especially people who have ran programs. And sometimes groups can get together as a consortium, if you will. Even though the law, I think it was said, or it will say later today, there's always going to be one lead agency that must be the fiscal agent that assumes those responsibilities. But sometimes partnerships are formed because some of the partners have strengths the others don't. And so that's one of the objectives of this meeting. We as staff, of course, have to be careful now moving forward because ex parte means that we cannot help you be competitive. That would be unfair to the others. And so, but we can connect you to the pieces and the information that helps you get prepared. So again, right now, by all means, who are the people that can take you by the hand? We can take you to some place, but we cannot help you be more competitive than the others, right? But we can give you information and connect with the stakeholders in the community that perhaps are looking for the specific vision or strengths that you bring to the table. Yep. Next question.
Great. I have two questions. The first is, when you're looking at employment metrics after programs, is there anything about specifically employment in Nevada? Can people go across the border? Is there?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So I'm going to let our programmatic folks answer that. Jeannie?
Real quick, the answer is yes. We will look at placement across states. It's done at a federal reporting level, but we do consider employment in other states to be a successful placement.
Okay. And can someone talk a little bit more about the 4-year cycle? I didn't really understand why now is important as opposed to next year. Thanks.
Marianne, would you like to take that?
Sure. I'd be happy to clarify. So we are authorized by the state to be able to renew contract awards for up to 4 years total. So we start out with 1-year initial awards. That's how we run. As long as everything's working well, performance is going fine, and we are mutually agree that we'd like to continue our relationship, we can go up to 4 years total without having to compete. This is a lot of effort for us and for you as respondents. So that's a great opportunity that we have to be able to roll forward contracts that are working so that we don't have to do this every single year. It would be an awful lot of effort. So that's how that cycle works. Hold on just 1 second. We have a question. We want to be sure we catch that.
I'll repeat the question for her. Yeah, she said, are the proposers going to be expected to write 4-year grants or 1-year grant or somewhere?
Sure. So we always ask for a proposal for the initial funding period, which normally is a year, but the RFP will spell that out. And so we're always asking for you to propose for an initial, normally 1-year period.
And that leads to a comment. I know there's another question that I think it came up this morning as well. There's a lot, it's been very intentful from our part to try to stay at the surface to give the newcomers, you know, as much information as possible. But needless to say, earlier we were asked to start to dive down into more specifics, and that's okay. We're trying to mitigate that. Next week at the Bidders Conference, there'll be a lot more detail because, next week, because in 2 days, you'll be seeing the RFP. Today is Monday, so Thursday is the RFP release. You'll be seeing a lot more detail that perhaps today you'll be hungry for. You'll be asking some questions. You'll hear us say that will be clearer 3 days from now on Thursday, as the RFP comes out, we'll have a more meaningful and detailed conversation next week at the bidders conference. I think it's important to note again that the legislation allows for those 4-year cycles, and hopefully if you write a good proposal, let's say that the first year goes great, you meet or exceed the outcomes that you put in your proposal. We just have to remember that, of course, if the funding, if the federal funding is available and it comes the next year, just like it did last year, that's condition number 1. Condition number 2, the conditions are the same in the labor market, and so we're still after the same proposal. And number 3, of course, that you have met the outcomes you promised the first year. If all of those are correct, then we would go ahead and extend a second year, and then a third and a fourth. But even if all those conditions were met on the 4th year, no matter if we wanted to, we could not. The law says only up to 4 years. After that, competitively procure again. That's a little bit more detail in that 4-year procurement cycle. Yes, thank you. Oh, yes.
Wait, we have online.
I'm sorry. Oh, we have online. Okay, let us go online, and then Ron will come right back to you.
Can you elaborate on the Local Workforce Development Board's new vision for the upcoming funding cycle?
Sure. So I wonder if our board member, Duana, didn't come like you, and she's the board members at home. But if they are, thank you for calling in. Our board members have, and our LEOs approved about a month ago or maybe more, the strategic direction for this investment cycle. And what it meant is, as you all know, we're in a new reality today than we were 3-4 years ago, or that we were 8 years ago. When the recession hit here, when it hit the nation, we went from leading the nation in growth to at the very bottom, right? The highest unemployment in the nation. And so we went into a mode of, we had a lot of people out of work. And so I think today is very different. We hear the word a lot. We're in virtual full employment, which means, fancy economists say that means that most everybody that is ready to work and willing to work is working. And so we really now find ourselves in a place where we have to tap into alternate labor market pools, which is great as well. We have, for example, a company in North Las Vegas called Sephora, who's approached the workforce development system and said, I want, if possible, half of my workforce to be people with disabilities. How great is that? That's an untapped labor force that we can do a better job with. So is vets. So is the reentry population. As we know, people coming out of the penal system, that flow is not slowing down, and we have to do something about that. Youth 18 through 24 also has a higher unemployment rate proportional to the rest of the population. And finally, let's not forget about the underemployed. We have been placing people, let's say, over the last 2, 3, 4 years in entry-level positions at $8, $9, $10 an hour. We know that you can sustain a family with that. And so another great strategy right now is to focus on the underemployed and upskill them and move them up that career ladder. So those are the things that we have heard from our board. That's part of the content they approved. We know that over the next decade here in Las Vegas, there's a lot of construction happening. We're building an NFL stadium, multiple resorts, a multi-billion-dollar convention expansion. And so construction is, again, something that's going to be a huge need here. And so we're going to invest in pre-apprenticeship activities to be able to have a talent pipeline that feeds into the apprenticeships. Those are some of the highlights of the strategic direction that our board has given us for this investment cycle. I think the only thing I missed there was all of that in the context of this system. So let's do all of that working side by side with the other funding stream so that our funding stream is most effective. Because, for example, there is something like, and it's not even there because it's not a mandated partner of WIOA, but childcare in places like Texas and Florida is a part of the WIOA delivery system, if you will, because those states made it so. And so here, the good news is that we have, as well as these mandated partners, we started to get the childcare programs into the one-stop centers as well. And what that means is that Title I no longer has to pay for childcare. Childcare can pay for childcare, and Title I can pay for more training. So that's the vision in the simplest way, I guess, that I can. Thank you. That's the only online? Okay. All right. So we're going to Ron.
Ron Hilke with Dieter. I think you have to keep in mind, too, you have multiple entities controlling these funds. WIOA itself at the local board level has a 2-year funding, has a 2-year life cycle. the intent of Congress and the administration when they gave the $18 million out to Jaime pending final approval.
Not to me.
Well, to the local board, is that it's to be spent in 1 year, the upcoming program year. If it is not fully expended, the board currently has authority to reallocate that in the successor year. But anything after that, these funds go away. On the 4-year cycle, that comes into play with the Nevada statutes and all that and regulations. In Nevada, governmental entities can do a maximum of a 4-year contract without going back into a competitive bid process. So that's the 4-year cycle. But the funds, I think it'd be best to keep in mind, you're funding 1 year of activity with the $18 million, subsequent activity if there's any holdover funds, or even if Congress and the administration decides to reduce or increase the allocation in the next year, that'll all come into play. But for purposes of your planning, and tell me if I'm totally off base on this, Jaime, but for purposes of your planning and your program, proposals, you're talking 1 year with the possibility of further, based on performance, of further activity.
Thank you, Ron. So that's absolutely correct. I think I think to get back to the question that was here earlier, this $18 million is expected to be spent effectively across those of you who will eventually be awarded it from July 1st of 2019 to June 30th of 2020. That's the year for these 18 million. And then hopefully, again, if everything remains the same and, we haven't gotten some kind of economic collapse or some, who knows, then we'll have another, hopefully 18 million the following year and so forth. And again, the only thing that changes is that we can't go forever because we need a procurement action every 4 years. But the funding can go up and down. Again, there was a time when I told you that story about the 8 and 10 years ago, we were leading the nation in unemployment. We were also leading the nation in the amount of these kinds of dollars that we got because we had the most need. We had the most people that needed to get back to work. And again, we've kind of flipped now. Our unemployment is really low. And so that affects the formula of how we're funded. So there might be other areas with higher unemployment that are getting more money than they used to, and we're getting less money than we're used to. So that is very true. Great points. I see a question. Yes, Duana, hi.
Hi, quick question. I saw on one of the slides match funding. I know that the state's OSID grants require match funding. So is it going to be optional or required? And if it is required, is it a one-to-one match for match funding?
Yep, great question. Thank you. So I'm going to turn over to Mary Ann.
On Thursday, that specific question will be answered. So it is coming. It is in there. There's a whole section on it. And if you have any additional questions, bring those to the bidders. But it is spelled out specifically in that RFP.
Yeah, we're going to dive down in great detail to those. So we have 10 minutes left in the first Q&A session. And again, for those of you who are not scared to death yet, I'm glad to see nobody's gotten up. So you're interested. So you'll have more opportunities to ask questions later today. But also, as Marianne said, next week at the Bidders Conference, more opportunity there. After that as well, you'll continue to have opportunities to ask questions through a process that we'll announce and talk more during those days. I think one of the things we wanted you to leave today with was, if you are not signed up to our email address that produces notices, we want you to do that, and that will be given it to you today. It will tell you everything you need to know so that you don't think, oh, I forgot to say this. Ask this question. I wish I knew Jaime's number. Don't call me because I probably won't have the answer. But we'll give you the way to get to those answers today. And so, but we have 10 minutes. Who has another question about what are these funds about? What am I, when I get, one of the things that I think about, again, having been in the system 10 years now, I came from the private sector and I didn't know anything about these funds. And I always thought, if an agency or as taxpayers, we are, investing $1 million into an agency, whatever your name is, ABC agency, yes, we understand that it requires staff to do these services because, again, the people we're trying to help need, it's not just sending them to a night school to get a certification. It's career coaching, it's support, it's guidance through the removal of these barriers. Again, this is supposed to remove barriers. They could be all the way from childcare, transportation, you name it. There's many barriers that sometimes these people need help with. And so we understand that these dollars need to pay for staff to do that. But at the end of the day, again, to me, the question was, what's the accountability? What's the return? So we as taxpayers invest to hopefully move people from dependency, if you will, on programs like unemployment, welfare, subsidized housing. And we want to empower them, upskill them so they can move over to this side and be able to have credentials, better jobs, better careers, sustain their families, and so forth. So to me, that was, the how I finally realized, why does this legislation, how has always had bipartisan support from the Republicans and Democrats? Why was it that in 2014, when Congress could not agree on anything, it was the only major piece of federal legislation that was passed by Congress and signed by the president? It's because it does, again, something that we need. It's not a program that keeps people in one place. It actually moves people from a place that they don't want to be into a much better place. So I think that's that's something that I understood. Yes, Faith. Okay. Oh, you were waiting for me, and here I can go and just on and on. Wave at me. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
I would like to know what the cutoff date would be for signing up as a provider.
Okay, great. The cutoff date to apply for this process?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So the default answer that I was programmed by the team to say is next Thursday.
Thursday.
This Thursday, you'll be giving that date. It's so I think earlier, and that's the truth, in a couple of days, you'll have a calendar of events with very precise instructions on almost everything you need to know. And then a week later, we'll sit here and just dissect that to the max. And so, but I can tell you that it's pretty, the timeline is pretty far away. So if, again, you're going to have months to be able, if you follow the steps, because you'll be revealed some steps in this RFP announcement. Today was a voluntary step that you took to come and get informed. When the RFP comes out on Thursday, you'll see that there's the very next important step is attendance to the mandatory bidders conference. You cannot miss that. And so, and then there's other steps like the submitting a statement of qualification for, I keep getting away from the mic, sorry. A statement of qualification. That's another step that's important, and we'll give you those dates and so forth. And so I think, again, we've tried to make some improvements to this process because the mandatory bidders conference, for example, that's coming on November 15, used to be that we said to everybody, you must be here physically. We know that in today's world, this global economy and full of technology, that we can do better than that. So now we've allowed, and we're testing it today, for people to participate virtually. So you could be in your office, sign on, and participate in the bidders conference as well. You don't have to be here. I would still say, personally, if I was an agency looking seriously about these funds, I would have not only a plan A that says I'm going to stay in the office or I'm going to plan to drive myself there, but I'd probably have a plan B, because if something happened in my personal life that kept me from driving here or getting on, I want somebody else from my agency ready to go and fill that, because again, that's important, the attendance and meeting those timelines. So very long answer because I'm trying to fill those minutes, but there you go. More information to come on Thursday, but it's a pretty broad timeline. Oh, here.
I do have a question.
The gentleman in the flashy fluorescent.
That is me. I got to be seen.
Yeah.
Can a for-profit business participate in this program?
Great question. The short answer is yes. The legislation has a list of agencies, and it doesn't exclude for-profits. Non-profits can apply. Government agencies can apply. A whole list. So yes, for-profits can and do apply. As a matter of fact, we have right now 2 of them under contract. Is that right? Yep. So yes. Good question. Well, earlier in the presentation, you saw that we listed current one-stop locations. And of course, you remember there was one comprehensive center that is here next door. You also saw the Job Connect offices where there's multiple of those WIOA 17 mandated funding partner programs. You saw the TANF office and you saw library locations. One thing to consider is, think about that $18 million just being a finite pie, right? A finite amount of resources. And so one of the questions that came out earlier is, how much can I ask for, right? And again, the answer to that is on Thursday, you will be getting
Thursday,
more.
right?
Yeah,
Thursday,
on Thursday. But what I think is saying is that the 18 million has to do it all, right? The 18 million has to be put in those centers. So we can't have a proposal that says, I want the 18 million to do services in 3 of these 8 or 1 of these 8. It seems logical, but that's again what you'll see when you see on Thursday the RFP. You'll kind of get an idea that these 18 million, when it comes to Title I, must meet the need across that area, just as the other programs, right? When you put it all together again, it's over $100 million that hopefully will do a better job, a more effective job when we're braiding it together in these centers. So that was, I think, an important thing that came up this morning and that I made myself a note to share. So with that being said, yes, sir, you're the first one to start. So we need a mic over here. Oh, okay, sir, 1 second. We're going to go online, I guess.
2 online questions.
2 online, okay.
Will the use of subcontractors be allowable? And second, can federal funds serve as a match?
Great question. So I'm going to look over to the fiscal
I'd
team.
be happy to handle that one, Jaime. I'm happy to.
And if you haven't noticed yet, if you are awarded funds, you can go away here confident that the day you call with fiscal questions, Marianne will be very happy to
Actually
answer.
am. I love your questions.
Yes.
They're great. I love them.
Go
I'm
ahead,
a
Marianne.
federal grant nerd, and I love what I do. All right. So essentially, yes, subcontracts are absolutely allowable. They do have certain procurement and other rules that will train you on should you be awarded the funds. And then what was the second question, Vicki? I'm sorry.
Can match be federal?
Oh, match cannot be federal. I'm sorry, you can't match federal with federal.
Great question, though, right? So this gentleman right here is patiently waiting. Thank you.
So the vision that I mentioned earlier would include some services that are listed in this RFP, but it would also include other services that are probably not going to be covered under this RFP. So how do I go about finding about other organizations with RFPs for which I might also apply?
So if I understood your question is, yeah, please, Faith.
So I'm a graduate of the California Foster Youth Program. And when I aged out, they paid my rent for 3 months and said, good luck and God bless. And my roommate beat me up before I moved out. So I was on my own and I was working for minimum wage, which then actually was enough to have my own apartment. It is no longer. But so my vision is to provide a place where there's both housing and education for youth, both before they emancipate and after they emancipate, so that they can be prepared. Because I didn't know what a FAFSA was, and I ended up joining the Navy, okay, because I was desperate, which happens to most of those who don't end up homeless or in jail. So I'd like to find some way to, tie that all together for kids who are coming up to 18 and those who've already passed it.
Yep. Okay. So I think I understand you a little better. I looked this way because earlier in the early session, we had an organization here in the front row who does exactly that. And so there is people in the community focusing on foster youth, both still in the system and aging out. That's exactly what these funds are intended to do. So again, program design is where you include those things. And you need more than our funds to have a location that pays for housing and so that's where partnerships are important. And so again, program design, I think, comes with perhaps if you say, can you connect me to those people? Yes, we have those, the names of the agencies that address foster care in this community. So yes to that. I think what you said is also very organically where we're going, because we've been talking so far. I think earlier we said the goal of these programs is to get people employed. And that's the simplest way to put it. but we also want them employed in good paying jobs, and we want them in career pathways, right? If you start to dive a little deeper. And when it comes to youth, there's other options. Employment is one option, but also is any kind of post-secondary activity. Apprenticeships is a great option for a youth. The military, as you said, another great option. You didn't have a good. So there's other options. Going to HVAC school here. Oh, okay. So here in Las Vegas, you can imagine we need to cool everything, right? So HVAC school is a great alternative here in the Valley. So there's multiple options, if you will, for those programs for youth. And so I imagine you can learn a lot about what's going on here by talking to our existing youth providers. You know, I think I've seen some of them in the room to this afternoon and this morning. Again, their contact info is on our website. They've signed in. That's the easy part. So I think that's your homework. You know, again, we have to stop short of doing for you what we are not doing for them. But connecting you with them is all good. I think you being at the Mandatory Bidders Conference is going to be great because they're going to be here and they're going to be addressing all the important questions to meet the need of today's of our labor market and where we stand today. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Was there another one, Faith, that was waiting? I couldn't remember. No? Yes, over here, this gentleman in the blue.
Are you going to be able to let us know the actual date of the Mandatory Bidders Conference?
Yes.
Or are we going to be waiting?
No,
just,
no, no.
Just
I can
because
tell
of
you right
scheduling.
now.
Okay.
I can tell you right now, but don't hold me accountable to because it's not in writing. But we believe that bar any, you know, unforeseen catastrophe or, you know, changes in budget and climate change, and the bidders conference will take place here at Workforce Connections Thursday, November 15th. Thursday, November 15th at 10 a.m. And you know, and again, we're being as cautious because we're still today, tomorrow, and Wednesday trying to finalize every little piece of this moving RFP that we've been working on now for a few weeks and months. But yes, November 15th, we believe this plan is going to happen right here, that Mandatory Bidders Conference. Of course, 3 days from now on Thursday, you will see, barring any unforeseen things, the actual release of this RFP. It will give you a full week to look at what we're putting out there, which is a little different, by the way. I'm going to share with you now something that that our board has heard. This is, again, part of when somebody asks, I think, online, what's the strategic direction we're going? You know, one of the things that is going to be new about what you'll see coming up is in the past, if you will, there hasn't been such a strong focus on well, the strong focus was on evaluating the proposal, right? The promise of what was to happen. What am I going to do for you? Then we scored that. And well, that's great. I think what you'll see a lot now that's a lot different than before, but we believe it's a good thing. Our board believes it's a good thing, is there's going to be just a strong evaluation on the demonstrated ability to perform what you're promising, right? And so that's, I think, going to be something that will ensure a greater return on investment. And so, again, you'll see more of that on Thursday, but it's been already discussed during our public meetings with our board members, our LEOs. There's a great desire, number one, not just to move the system or move these funds into the context of a system approach, working with the partners you've heard about, but also having a way to more tangibly measure the impact of these funds. I think if any of you have not heard of OWIN or are not familiar with OWIN, OWIN is the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation. They have released some funds now where it's kind of a performance-based approach. It's new, it's a pilot. And so again, I say that to say, I think that's the direction that we keep pointing is if we're making investments, we want to see the performance of the system rise, right? And so, yeah, there's some insight right there of what's coming. But again, I think the intent of today, we purposely wanted to keep this conversation very high level to be able to give the new people's not have that fire hydrant approach, right? Where sometimes we feel you're trying to drink out of a fire hydrant because there's so much coming at you. So we're really grateful, I think, that the interest we've seen both in the morning and today, very diverse, interest, even across, I think, outside of our state borders, there's people interested. So it's very exciting. Do we have any more questions regarding this? What is Title I? What do you expect from the funds? And how do I go about applying for them? Yes, over here.
Just a quick note while the microphone's walking over. I don't know if we've discussed it here in the afternoon session. These slides and I believe an attendance list will be posted in the next few days. So if you want a copy of the slides, check back on the website.
And again, for you, sir, or any others that are, the staff is available to ask questions of, our system, our partners. I just want you to be aware, what we can't do is engage in conversation about this process specifically, right? And about a proposal that you would be bringing to the table. So, but we're still available for all other kinds of questions. So where was I pointing? I'm sorry, right here.
Hey, Hemming. I'm really intrigued and excited about the systems development that you're talking about and the braiding of the funds and the partnerships that you've developed and enhanced across the state. I just do want to caution, just one thing, that it doesn't always look the same in all parts of the state. And so the way that some of those partners partner in Las Vegas, for example, is not always the way that they partner in Tonopah. And so there are those key differences to know at a local level, what's that partnership look like?
Thank you, Stacy. And yes, and I couldn't agree more with you. I think I have to give you props. And Nye, you guys have been doing that for a long time. When I went over there and saw how you have had those partners, or a great majority of those partners in your building already. So I congratulate you guys for doing that. And you're correct, because as we travel the country as well, even not here, not only is it different how it's happening in Northern Nevada than in Southern Nevada, but when you cross our borders, any states, it seems different, right? I think that's the dichotomy of WIOA, that they left enough flexibility for it to be messy and enough restrictions for it to be really tough. And so you do see different deployments everywhere, but the substance or the vision remains the same, because it's spelled right there: an integrated delivery system where the partners work together under the coordination of an operator, right? And so I know it's a simple way to put it, but it's harder said. It's harder done than said. Easier said than done. Thank you. I was making it hard on myself there. Yep. So great. Thank you, Stacy from Nye. Oh, online? Okay.
If awarded a contract, are we going to be mandated to co-locate with previously mentioned system partners?
Oh, great question. So let me start by saying that, co-location, I don't want anybody to think that we believe that co-location is necessarily effectiveness. I think we all know that you could be working in the next cubicle with somebody and not be effective because the people decided, I'm not going to collaborate. I might co-locate, but I'm not going to collaborate. So it's not the core essence is not the physical co-location. If done right, of course, co-location helps. But you saw the list of the centers, I think, earlier in the slide, and you'll see a more specific picture on Thursday. But I think the short answer is yes. The context of this, where we've been going for 2 years now, is to say Title I services, the law is very clear, does not belong in a building by itself. I keep getting away from the mic. Title I belongs in one-stop centers next to the other titles. And so, as Stacy said, might not be in this location, we might not have all 17. There might be 7. In this location, there might be another 7. In this location, there might be 4 of the 17. But little by little, we have to start to braid this system into something that's more integrated, more seamless, more collaborative. And so I think, yes, if you are awarded a contract with Title I, you will be expected to deliver those Title I services in the context of one-stop centers and part of the one-stop delivery system. Good question. That online thing is pretty interesting, huh? It feels like we're speaking to a ghost. Who else had, oh, this is the wrap-up single that fast? Okay. That was quick. So again, please don't feel that this was your last opportunity. There'll be lots of opportunities to ask all of your questions. I think once you have the RFP, you'll have more questions. This morning we heard really specific questions poking into the RFP, and we had to always keep resisting that temptation to dive down and reveal what you'll see on Thursday. So, but again, plenty of time. On Thursday, you'll see a lot of things that will make you hopefully want to come back next week and ask specific questions about what is this, and after that, there's a more period of questions and answers. Again, during the RFP or in the RFP, you'll see how that process will work. And don't let me mislead you in the sense that staff has to be very careful about talking about the RFP proposal itself, but staff is still here to answer questions about, we have providers under contract right now, right? There's agencies doing this work, spending the $18 million from last year. And so the work continues. We still have to talk every day about the system, about integration, about how the services are being delivered. What we have to try to stay away from talking is your particular proposal, right? Your particular proposals with us. So yes, one more question. Okay. They got in just by the nick of time.
Is the current one-stop delivery system supported by a memorandum of understanding?
Yes, the short answer is yes. I think, again, earlier in the slide, we saw as a board, we are called to, number one, convene the system. And so here in our local area, we're responsible to put together a document and then those 17 partners sign it. And so the answer is yes, we have reached that. Believe it or not, there's some areas that don't across the country. So we feel lucky that, again, we've made progress. But there's some areas of the country where they're still struggling with the MOU, still struggling with the next document within the MOU that's called the IFA, or Infrastructure Funding Agreement. We're not necessarily struggling with that. Those are all good signs of a system that's coming together. So again, great progress in those regards, and working with our partners on the stuff that's mandated by the law, but also on these things that I said to you earlier. A great example is childcare. They're not mandated to be with us here in these centers, but yet they are coming because they see the value. They see how working together is better than trying to do the work alone by ourselves. So good questions. So, oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry, we got to come to the mic with you. Yep, mic is coming. Let's go. Faith, you're getting your steps again.
Again.
Afternoon.
In regards to office space, would we be required to rent out or have an allocation for office space within the workplace connections?
Great question. And so the fiscal team, Marianne's going to address that.
Sure. So of course, our default answer is Thursday. Well, you'll want to check the RFP because it really depends on what you're applying for. So you'll want to take a look at that. That will give you an idea about what's required. So Jaime did talk a lot about co-location. So that is our focus, but you'll have to really read the RFP and think about your program design to know if that's something you would need or not.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think next week we'll have a more.
Well, is it going to be mandatory? Because it's like I have my own building already. I don't need to be any next to somebody. I mean, it would be nice to be next to somebody, have a satellite office there possibly for communication purposes, which would be all right. But I've got my own building.
Is that a question? Do you have to, right? You said, I have my own building. Do I have to go to your building, right?
You're right.
Yeah. So again, the law is very specific, right? The law says certain services must be in one-stop centers. And the board designates one-stop centers. So while you have a building, it's not necessarily a one-stop center. And while you have a building, you might not have enough room to sit the 17. And so that's the dilemma, right? And so again, that's why we talked a lot about fit today, because not every agency is a good fit for this model, right? There'll be a lot of agencies doing good work for the community, providing, all kinds of programs, addressing homelessness, addressing hunger, addressing substance abuse, but these are employment and training programs. And the other 17 funding streams are employment and training programs. And so the law says we want those programs to work together to maximize the effect. move the workforce upwards, as I said earlier. And so do other programs have a place in it all? Of course. I said earlier, childcare, removing the barriers of childcare and substance abuse and transportation are all a piece of it. But the law doesn't give us the flexibility that says, you can go ahead and continue to do that. The law is saying the services must be together in the context of a one-stop center.
Okay, so does that mean that we can have 2 locations or just 1 location? And about how many square feet would you make available to us?
Sure. Yeah. So again, on Thursday, on
Thursday, right?
You're going to see a lot of information that will frame healthy dialogue next week. Today was really focused on what is it and how do I apply for it? That was the theme. Next week, we're going to talk about once I apply for it, how much room are you going to give me? What is it going to cost me? Can I, all those questions, we're going to really dive down because we're hoping again that either it's raise the interest of some that haven't been a part of the system before and they'll participate in that conversation or not. But again, I think that those questions about space and cost will all be really expanded upon and talked about in great detail next week at the Mandatory Bidders Conference. Yep. But thank you for that. That's good. Okay, I don't see another hand, so I'm going to thank you again for your interest, for being here, and we really look forward to seeing you next week at the Mandatory Bidders Conference. Have a great rest of your day. Mm-hmm.